Good evening, or good afternoon, rather. This is a brand new episode of The Chicken Box. I'm your host, Jackson Rao. This week, solo show, but I am here to talk with Veronica Dunlap. So let me give you her bio, and then we're going to get started. This will be a very interesting conversation about artificial intelligence and how it impacts our lives directly. So Veronica Dunlap, Esquire, MBA, is a civil rights attorney, strategic advisor, and the founder of Lanuma LLC, where she guides nonprofits, entrepreneurs, and mission-driven businesses through AI readiness, AI governance, and the practical deployment of AI solutions that drive lasting impact. Her fluency at the intersection of law, technology, and community power is rooted in a decade of hands-on work building digital infrastructure at scale. As a director of justice initiatives at Pro Bono Net, she led the full rebuild of Law Help NY, now serving more than 500,000 New Yorkers annually, and directed the launch of Tenant Help NY, integrating automated chat tools to connect underserved communities with critical legal resources in real time. Most recently, she served as a panelist for the AI Life Pilot panel at the Maryland Daily Records 2026 Women's Leadership Summit, where she explored how AI is reshaping the way individuals and organizations work, lead, and grow. As a trusted leader to small businesses and small and social enterprises navigating today's rapidly evolving AI landscape, Veronica brings a unique integrated perspective, one that combines legal and governance expertise with the operational instincts of a senior executive who has managed technology platforms, cross-functional teams, and multi-million-dollar portfolios. She is the recipient of the National Bar Association's Outstanding Woman Lawyer in Public Service Award, a Fordham Law BLSA 2024 Trailblazer, and the proud daughter of Baltimore. At the 2026 Afro News Black Business Expo competition, she brings to the discussion panel not only a sharp eye for viable, scalable ventures, but also a deep commitment to ensuring that Black entrepreneurs have every tool, including AI, to win on their own terms. So, welcome to the show, Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely. That was a mouthful. So we're gonna go through it. I felt like I was reading for a month, so I apologize. But we're gonna go through it, let everybody sort of understand your background and then where we are now. Now, what's interesting is you're a civil rights lawyer or civil rights attorney with an MBA, and now you're leading AI strategies, like which is not a typical path, obviously. What connected the dots for you that technology would sort of be the center of your work?
Yeah, it was not, apparent to me when I was in law school that eventually I would end up in technology. I actually got to law school thinking I was going to be a big banking lawyer, a big business lawyer, which is why I did a JD MBA. And then I lived in Harlem at the time, and I attended a Saturday morning session at the House of Justice, Reverend Al Sharpton's House of Justice. And my heart was moved. And I thought, if I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a lawyer for the people. I'm going to help people. And so I started my career there at the National Action Network. And then when I was probably at my peak there, I had really climbed the ladder in the legal department, and I was a deputy at that time. I thought about other ways to help my people stay ahead, not just in civil rights, but also how to connect them to the world that I saw technology was expanding and we were getting left behind. And there was a big conversation at that time about the digital divide and about blackout spots where people didn't have the technology or access. That was actually intensified during COVID. And so I was working for a company called Pro Bono Net, where we used technology like chats, like automated forms for court to help people who couldn't afford lawyers. And that was a big deal during COVID. And that's where the transition sort of happened for me.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. And I feel like a lot of folks who end up, especially in like civil rights law, sort of have that, as they say, like a come to Jesus moment where you're just like, oh, you know what? Actually, this is kind of what I want to do, which I think is pretty admirable. Um, I do want to talk about Law Help NY, which, as I read, is a platform that is now serving 500,000 New Yorkers. Like, that's a huge scale. How did that, like, what went right? What went wrong that you sort of learned? Okay, this is how you scale these huge projects.
Yeah, Law Help New York is so near and dear to my heart. It was started, I want to say, almost 20 years ago, like in the beginning of like chat, when we had just come out of the chat rooms, and now we were using chats with businesses. And at Pro Bono Net, they thought, well, what if we use this chat to be a place where people who had legal questions about civil legal issues could get real answers or get connected to real organizations that can help them. I came on board right at the pandemic, right in 2020, where there was more need than ever for there to be people and means for people to be connected to the legal system while the courts were closed and everything was virtual. And so it was absolutely necessary to not just modernize what Law Help New York was doing and bring us into the current moment, but also expand. At that time, I think it was maybe helping 30,000 people a year through the chat. And what I did was move it from a smaller sort of WordPress type of platform where, most people have a personal website on something like WordPress where it's really easy in the background. I moved it to something very sophisticated that could hold all of the incoming traffic, which was Drupal. But more importantly, I went out and I hired law students. I hired law students from every law school in New York. I reached out to law students in Pennsylvania, in Connecticut, and I said, I know that to get your law degree, you have to have like 30 hours of community credit. You can get them here. And so starting at that time in COVID, I had to turn law students away. And we had training cohorts every quarter where I had, 100 law students and volunteering for 2 to 4 hours a day, so that every single day that chat line was staffed with a human who could refer people out, but also I built the connecting sort of AI system that when people didn't need to get in touch with the human, there was a triage point where the AI would say, let me just direct you right now to, New York Legal Aid Society or Catholic Charities of New York. So there was a decision tree that we built also into that technology. But it was a matter of connecting the people and connecting the technology together where there was a need.
Okay. No, I mean, that's incredibly impressive. And like you said, it grew from what, 20,000, 30,000 people you were helping all the way up to 500,000, which is pretty darn impressive. But that sort of brings me to Tenant Help NY, right? Which you're using automated chat tools. Now, is that backed by human beings or is that just fully automated?
That's Tenant Help New York is fully automated. It was an AI native platform that I built, also arose during the pandemic. And not to harken back to darker times, but during the pandemic, a lot of people couldn't pay rent. They were getting evicted. They had no help. And especially in New York, there was a new law that said every tenant is entitled to have an attorney. The problem is, how do you get the tenants hooked up with the attorneys when no one's outside? How do you make that happen? Not only that, what if it's coming up your court date and you don't have an attorney yet? What do you do? And so this platform had two distinct areas I built into it. One was for the attorneys like myself who weren't housing law practitioners, but needed to very quickly learn about housing law so that they could go represent someone virtually for an eviction hearing. And we built in all types of models and tools and tests and trainings so that those attorneys could get the knowledge they needed in order to have a solid understanding of housing law before they went to court. Now, for the tenants, we did something entirely different. We built forms and templates, and the same thing. You sort of come in and the system would ask you a few questions and then direct you to a form, and you just put in a few things and it builds out the form for you that you then send directly to the court. And so that way, you don't have to have a lawyer for that particular stage of the litigation, but it was really important to make sure that form was filled in correctly and got to the court on time so that you're not in the streets before you have time to find an attorney. And so building Tenant Help New York at that time, it was really right before the eviction moratorium was over. And so I knew a bunch of eviction notices were going to go out. And so my team and I, we just worked until the midnight hour to launch that platform before the eviction moratorium was lifted, so that people could be ready and attorneys could have the information they needed to protect our people, keep them in their homes.
Okay, no, that's great. No, it really is. I mean, it's interesting. COVID, in a lot of ways, and I often bring it up because to me, it's the big, it's the elephant in the room still today.
Mm-hmm.
It created so many sort of gaps in life, period, and or exposed them in a lot of big ways. But also, it gave rise to things like this, right? Where
Yeah.
because we couldn't all be, face to face, you kind of have to fill the gaps with something. And and there's some really sort of innovative ways in which that happened. And clearly, tenant help and why is one of them. I do have to ask: was it at the time? Was there sort of a fear that since you're having these chatbots do civil rights work in a lot of ways, like was there a fear of like, oh, how well is this going to get it right? Because obviously there is known biases that get exposed in AI, right? But the people who build it are using the same sort of biases that they generally have themselves, and sort of the information that's leaching off the internet, to sort of build these LLMs and things like that. Was there a fear that maybe you weren't going to get exactly what you were looking for? And tech solutions often overpromise and underdeliver. How did you kind of reconcile with that situation? Or did you run into things that you were like, whoa, this is not what we needed at all and not enough?
That is the right question, not only for back then, but especially for the moment we're in right now. Like, who is building this and what are they pouring into it? In the same way that you raise a child and before they go to school, you pour all this in that's in the home into the child, and then they go out into the world and people either go, oh, wow, or they go, oh, Lord, And so
what have you done?
What have you put out into the world, And so in the same vein, I thought about that, especially, remember, I'm coming from a civil rights background where I understand the history of bias, inherent bias, implicit bias, prejudice, and discrimination in all forms, where I had been, on the front lines of that work. It was really important to me that what we poured into that development process of Tenant Help New York came from a place of the people and objective learning, but also super subjective understanding of how information can be manipulated or fed into a database to produce outcomes that are biased and sometimes just downright racist, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And so what I did at the beginning of the process is I took my, I had like my own version of a street team at the tech company, but we called them our outreach and community folks. And I had them actually go out to tenants associations, like in Marcy Projects. I had them go to homeowners associations at Co-op City in the Bronx. I had them to go to places where people would be facing these issues and do focus groups. What are the things that you're afraid of in this process that you don't understand? I wanted to make sure that that was included. What kind of things have happened in the past, so that when I'm building this decision tree, the system, the data that we're putting in is based off of real stories, real people's experiences. And then as we got closer to launch, I was very certain to have a very intentional human design process. So I tested it out. I invited people, I paid them, because you can't just ask people to do things for free. But
of course, yeah.
I paid people to go and play in the site before it was live. And I said, tell me how it feels. I looked up like different types of users, the attorney users, the tenant in a desperate situation user, the homeowner who's a landlord and has a tenant and doesn't know what to do because they haven't paid type of user. I looked up these type of folks and invited them to be a part of the beta testing and play around in it for a good, 6 weeks or so, and sort of get the bugs out and see if it felt intuitive, see if it felt empathetic, and also expert. Like expertise was necessary, excellence was necessary. And so
Right.
that's what I thought about when I was developing that particular platform and the tools that are a part of the platform to make it work.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, that's a very fair answer. Yeah, I think not having that sort of concern is a dangerous kind of thing. You're like, oh, technology will all work out. It's a computer. Surely it won't lie to us, right? Or surely it won't disappoint. But I've worked. I had a long career in IT, and it's just that idea of like this is going to do this, and then the level that it actually comes in at, it's a pretty big gap, 9 times out of 10. So I think it's a very healthy thing to be skeptical of what it's promised versus what you get delivered. Um, in your bio, and I read earlier, we talked about AI readiness and AI governance as terms like sort of founders should be aware of. What does that mean to Black entrepreneurs, in your opinion, very specifically?
Yeah, I usually will start even further back, and
Okay.
I will ask people who I encounter, what is your AI policy?
Hmm. Okay.
And if they say none, then that is your AI policy, because AI is happening at your place of work,
Right.
whether you have an AI policy, especially if you don't have an AI policy, but whether you have an AI policy or not. People say, oh, I'll just use this tool to hurry up and write this email, or I'll use that tool to, make my schedule, or this one to take notes. If you don't have an AI policy, that is the policy. It is the wild, wild west
Mhm.
over in your technology center of your department, your company. And so I start there because I try to get people to understand that, you have to think about AI in the same way that you think about a new employee. You
Mhm.
have to think about what policies, what I expect a new employee to do. Don't go and read other people's emails, you know,
Right. Yeah.
don't plagiarize,
Mhm.
um, don't look at certain company documents, without express permission. You have to build parameters around it. So I usually will ask people that question to see where they are. And then comes the AI readiness conversation, because some folks, they come in, they say, Veronica, I have this small company and it's just me and one other person, and we want to build a communications department of all AI tools, and we're already using this thing and we're already using that thing. And I say, well, let's talk about what systems you have in place. And I go and I do an assessment of like what kind of computers you're using, what kind of communication channels, and what are the agreements around those. And I figure out you're not ready to use AI yet.
Right.
The people who work there aren't really trained on all the features and what they can expose you to, or what you need to protect. And so let's start with a series of questions, an assessment to say, am I even in the right place as a business to bring AI on? And if I am, what
How?
AI tools do I actually need?
Right.
And what features do they have? And what kind of training do the people who work here need, or understanding do they need, and upskilling they need to actually use the tools we bring on, right?
Mhm.
I've encountered folks who have 7 different tools, and at least 3 of them could do what all 7 do, but you're paying for 7 subscriptions.
Exactly.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. There's a money sink in, especially from for LLMs, for people who just kind of don't know. And you're like, well, I definitely need a subscription to ChatGPT, and I definitely need a subscription to Gemini or Claude or what have you. It's like you could just do one of those, like I mean, like, or maybe two if it's just very specific things. But yeah, I feel like it feels to me very similar to I need all of these streaming channels or what have you, right? Like I need HBO, I need Netflix and stuff. And it's like, how many do you actually use? Well, I only watch one of these. Okay, so get rid of the other 7 that you never watch, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like sort of the new age version of that. Um, I I want to address another sort of thing with AI with it, which I think is I think it's a looming thing that is going to really kind of rear its ugly head here in the upcoming midterm election, actually, which is sort of there's been a bit of a shift in how people are dealing with AI as far as how they feel about it, right?
Mhm.
Especially with data center building and things like that. I think it was like, this sounds really cool. And it's like, we're going to put it in your neighborhood. And people are like, that's not okay with me. Um, And so Gallup just did a poll I just saw the other day where 71% of the respondees, I'll read you the question, which was overall, would you strongly favor, somewhat favor, or somewhat oppose, or strongly oppose the construction of data centers in your area to support artificial intelligence or AI technologies in the US? 71% said, oppose or strongly oppose. And I'm wondering if, and this is becoming a very political issue, have you thought about like what happens if this stuff sort of slows down a bit, right? Because there's a lot of investment in AI, obviously billions of dollars. I mean, I think the talk is maybe 6 AI corporations are really kind of holding up the economy in a lot of ways. Is there a concern of going too far into this and then being kind of stuck? Or do you have the sort of background of like, even if this goes away, we can still shift back to sort of quote unquote old school ways of handling this? And what do you tell entrepreneurs? Like, how do you tell them to sort of hedge, right? Like, you don't want to go 100% into this because you don't know where you're going to be, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, and I want to talk about both of those issues that you raised, because I think the data centers and environmental concerns, and especially around environmental justice, are real concerns.
Yeah.
If you look at history in this country, generally where there are people who have been disenfranchised, people who have been marginalized, and they hold spaces that they call community, corporations have been given license to put pollution, chemical waste, all types of hazardous materials, build data centers in those communities, specifically because of sometimes their lack of power and resources to fight against those corporations and the politicians that give them the license to do those things, those harmful things. And so in my own thinking, again, going back to my civil rights background, in my thinking about responsible AI use, I do think about this environmental justice question. And part of my decision making around certain tools is reliant upon how I feel about that organization. So I am not a ChatGPT user.
Right.
I am not a ChatGPT user. I made that decision based on that company's decision to go into business with the federal government and develop systems of war against civilians. So that's a personal choice, but also it's a business choice. When you look at people making decisions about where they want to buy stock and where they want, canceling ChatGPT subscriptions, like that's a real thing. And so I chose Claude as my, sort of daily, exactly.
That's my LLM of choice as well.
Exactly, my LLM of choice, my daily LLM of choice. And the, founders of Anthropic are very mindful of the harm that data centers cause. They attended an environmental forum in, I think, The Hague or something, where all the rich people go and talk about the environment and social issues. But they were willing to show up. They were the only company willing to show up and talk about the harm of data centers and the harm of the water in communities, and want to be a part of the solution. There's some innovative thinking out there about how to offshore data centers, and so that there's not a pulling of the water from local systems. But it is something that I consider when I'm thinking about which tools I want to use, how often I want to engage with AI, because not every task requires the use of AI.
Right.
Like there's still Google out there. I'm a person, I will still pull out a thesaurus, like I have it on my shelf. I will pull that thing out, and also you don't want to lose in yourself and your team those foundational critical thinking and analytical thinking skills that are necessary outside of AI and Google and all those things. You want to be able to maintain that. And so I think in the conversations that I have with business owners about AI and their tools, I talk about that too, that not being heavily reliant on AI only, but using it as a partner to the human work that you're doing, you know.
Right.
And then on the other hand, there is this very real, um, no, I don't know what they call them, but they call the maglevs, those really fast trains in Japan that
Yeah.
sort of like float over. Like we are on, we got to get on the train. We've
Yeah.
got to get on the train because it's not just because, oh, I can make better flyers or, oh, I can fire my comms team. It's because at some point, and this was the government concern about Claude's Fable 5, the way businesses work, the foundational, operational nuts and bolts are able to be carried by an AI agent, by an AI tool.
Right.
And if you don't have an understanding of that, your business might not be able to link or talk to other businesses in the background, which is already here. You know, we're already there, and we, you know, and at the same time, think about Y2K and the internet and how that all came about. Like it's not going away, and so let's responsibly as possible um, get these tickets, get on this train, and keep our businesses moving at the pace of the economy, at the pace of business, so that we thrive.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's, to me, I think that is the best way of looking at what the future of AI is. Some people are like, it's not going to last. I'm like, it's going to be here. Like, you got to kind of get over that. But the question is, what do you do now that you know that it's going to last? How do you make it not destroy the environment, right? There is no AI tools or LLMs that are worth not having fresh drinking water, in my opinion. If I have to make the choice, sorry, as much as I think Claude is very cool, I would rather have water. Like I know it's what a wild stance to have, but the people who are running these things don't have to concern themselves with it, and so their perspective is very odd to me. But they're so disconnected with, sort of on the ground people, us who are not billionaires. Um, and so that actually kind of brings me to another question, which is, with AI, there is a real concern about sort of consolidating a lot of power to a very few corporations, right, in the hands of very few people. What is your assessment of like Black-owned businesses? How do they compete in that environment, right? Because like you said, it's just this maglev train is moving super fast. So how do Black entrepreneurs get on that train, but make sure that they are not, even though they're moving along with the technology, we're not just completely shut out of these sort of top echelon positions, and vis-a-vis, we're not being asked about how this thing is constructed. We're not being asked of, considering the biases that we're seeing in it and things like that. So how do we balance that?
Yeah, that's the great question for right now, because we're in this sort of moment where folks are trying to figure that out. Like, where do I fit here? And where is this taking me? And what are the things I should be thinking about as I watch this AI bubble grow and grow and grow? There's, the most direct thing, which is build a business, build an AI native business, be, excellent at it, and get acquired, sell it, and build another one and build another one. But that starts with like the skills. There are free AI certification programs out there. Anthropic has one for Claude. You can get 3 free certifications if you have the $20 a month plan, or you can pay $100 and you get the same certifications, even if you don't have Claude subscription. There's also Google. They have like 13 free AI certification programs out there. Upskill yourself. It's sort of, think about back during the late 90s or so, when the manufacturing sector basically collapsed. We had all these factories, and that was a big thing in Baltimore. The steel workers and the ice cream factories and beverage factories, and they all went away. If you see the writing on the wall, upskill, start to go out and explore and learn, get these free certifications, not so that you could just put it on your resume, but because you can use it to build a better business and teach other people and make sure you're in the market, make sure you're a part of the conversation.
Right.
Invest in the AI tools that you feel are, helpful in the way that you need, that you
Right.
feel like everybody's saying it, that's what I'm doing.
Okay. If somebody is trying to get started, what is your first recommendation? Is it start, kind of using an LLM? Obviously build a business. That makes total sense, you said. But as far as just trying to get an understanding of how all of this works, right? Is it just start using an LLM? Is it maybe start taking some courses? How do you see that?
Yeah, I usually tell people you're using AI already, even if you don't know it. When Copilot says, "You want me to finish that sentence?" You're using AI.
Exactly.
When Google says, "Oh, here's the AI summary," and you're like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to do that," you're using AI. And so, what I ask people to do is to take one task during the day, even if for one day, and say an email that you've been dreading writing this email to whomever about the company picnic for the summer. Create a prompt, add your own voice as an example, like type a few sentences so that your own voice is present, and ask your Copilot or Gemini to write that email for you. So what would have taken you 20 minutes to sort of fight over in your head, you have, and it take you 5 minutes to clean it up and make it feel like it's coming from you without you spending so much time worrying about, where the comma goes, right?
Right, exactly.
And so I usually ask people to start there because it is a simple task and it's something that can feel like a small win that you build on another win and another win and another win and get more comfortable with it and start to think about what other things can Copilot do,
Right.
what other things can Gemini do. Get curious and get creative and be also accountable and responsible with what you put into these tools.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah, I feel like most people are sort of at least tangentially aware of what AI can do on the most basic levels, but I think people would be shocked to know what it can do, even as, Joe or Susie, user, what you can do now, right?
Yeah.
Before it was, give me 10 ideas for, a video I'm going to make on YouTube. Like, we're well past that. And I think people don't realize how fast it's moving too.
Absolutely.
And Black businesses have always been put at a disadvantage, whether it's historically, whether it's funding or what have you. This is one of those kind of democratizing tools. If you have the ability and the knowledge to make it work, you can make it work for you in ways that you could scale something way faster than previously you were capable of doing. Let's see. I have many questions. Try not to bore you to death here, but 5 years from now, what do you see as sort of what being AI ready is and what a Black business is sort of using that technology?
Yeah, I think 5 years from now, that bubble that we're in, that's like growing, it's gonna plateau a bit. It's gonna level out. It's gonna find its normal. And I think Black businesses, because Black people are so creative and have had to make do a lot of times with far less, we're so good at taking everything in the cupboard, maybe throwing it at the wall and seeing what works. And then once we figure out that formula, we can hold on and create our own business operational normal so that we know we don't need 7 tools now. We need 3 tools and we need 2 human beings, and we can annualize our growth based on this, and we can make better predictions about where profitability is coming from. And I think people will get smarter about it as we sort of normalize how we use these tools. It'll be less about making flyers for your event and more about let's create, I need one human being, create 30 days of content, including the visuals, launch that. That's a year's worth of comms done, in 2 days, right? And where now do we spend our time? We spend it in cultivating community with our clients, with our customers. That's growth. I think this will be the new normal. People will figure out their stasis, will figure out the 3 or 2 things that will help to not only grow, but sustain their business and give them more time back to work on nurturing those consumer relationships.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a good point. Using that technology to sort of be able to shift back to an actual human interaction as far as through your business, because so much of running a business is like, okay, I've got to do all this paperwork, I got to do these spreadsheets and things like that, which pulls people. The larger they grow, it pulls you back from customer facing things, which is generally why people get into the creating those businesses, and they enjoy talking to people, and they're like, yeah, but now I'm in the back office and I never have time. This is a thing that can allow you to do that if utilized correctly. So I actually agree with you there. You're going to be at the Afro's Black Business Expo, which
Yes, I will.
which is coming up here soon, and you're on a discussion panel.
That's
August
correct.
13th, as it says below. And you're going to be on the discussion panel. Is the conversation mostly about what we talked about, or do you guys have a specific topic? Because I'm unaware.
Yeah, it's actually a very nuanced discussion. There are several different folks on the panel from different areas of AI. There are 2 people from government. There's someone who focuses on building Black women's skill set in AI. And there's myself, and I believe one other person who focuses on healthcare and AI. And so, and how that's used in the medical industry. I think people will learn a lot. They will hear things that they weren't aware of about how long ago the government started using AI with regard to its own operations and how it interacts with the public, and where that might be going. I think if you think about how we hear about AI in the public domain right now, there's not a lot of discussion about how it's, running some of the federal systems, that things that we rely upon. And so I think this discussion is really important for people to see a broader range of AI applications and bring their questions.
Okay, excellent. No, that's fantastic. So this is a portion of the show where we do the get on the box type of segment. I will go first, which is, what we're gonna leave for the audience to take with them. So one, Veronica, thank you for coming in. That was really great. Excellent conversation. Look, I am a big old nerd when it comes to technology. And so watching AI kind of grow and change has been really fascinating to me. And I do think that your work as a civil rights lawyer and then sort of coming into this world is what is desperately needed, because I think, again, there are a lot of people who are creating this technology who are a bit disconnected from the ground. And I think having people who are like, hey, remember, people exist down here, don't forget about us, and don't forget about Black folks who are trying to get into these businesses using your technology, having folks like you there that can advocate for this technology and help people on their way to using it properly, and keeping us, specifically as Black folks, sort of still in the eye of people as this technology is moving forward. Apologize for the ringing phone. I think that's important. I think it's deeply important. So I do appreciate your work. So you are now on the Boxx.
Thank you, Jay. It's been wonderful to be here and share my knowledge and expertise with the audience here, but more importantly, to help people understand that you're not powerless. The power is out there for you to grab, and this is one way to do it. Educating ourselves and using our education to help each other and to grow and be financially independent is really important in the Black community. And I want people to understand that you don't need a whole bunch of money to get started. I started my business on a $20 a month Claude plan. And the ideas and the creativity and the ethics for working and creating something good is what you bring to the tool. You don't get it from the tool, you bring that. And so stand in your power, understand that you have everything inside of you that you need to be successful in this new AI world, and ask people questions. Go out there and learn and grow, and I will look for you, and I hope to see you out there.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you once again, Veronica. Really appreciate your time. Have fun at I unfortunately will not be at the Black Business Expo this year, but I'm very interested to see how it goes, especially your panel. So that it sounds incredibly interesting. So thank you for your time, and to our listeners and viewers, thank you. We will see you guys next week for another episode of the Chicken Box.
Thank you. Bye.